Welcome to Burn, Rate, and Beyond. This is episode 9. I'm Chad Folsom. I'm here with the always happy and friendly Jeffrey Mazza.
Hey everybody, how are you?
Good stuff. Today, what is our plan, Mr. Jeff? I think we were talking about costs. Is that right?
Yep, cost optimization.
Okay. Uh, there's like two ways to make a business more profitable, right? Cut costs and increase revenue. Those are pretty much the only two main ways to make it happen, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
the and obviously it's always easier said than done. But I guess the question I had, the first thing that came to my mind is when we were talking about this title, it says optimization, and I'm like, what does optimization mean in this sense? So I don't know. Do you have a definition you like or a way you think about this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a formal definition, but in my mind, when it comes to optimization, it's really kind of, I would say like spending, a company spend in a way where it kind of maximizes its value, but without sacrificing other quality or even customer service of some sort for the customer, but it's being able to utilize the spend in a way to really have maximum output.
Maximum output. Okay, I like that. Yeah, that, and I guess that's the thing. So what you were saying, I guess the key there is you're saying output. You're like, okay, maximum output. And then output of what? And I think that's kind of the question is what are we optimizing for? Um, and the question is, I think we'll kind of get into this a little bit later, but it's the idea of like, are we optimizing for output? Are we optimizing for effectivity? Are we
Mhm.
optimizing for lack of friction? There's a bunch of different ideas there. So cool. That's one particular one. The thing that comes to mind now, this year, especially with respect to cost, is the whole Elon Musk and his philosophy of slash first and fix later. So there's a little bit of, does that is that that's optimizing for I think speed, right? We're saying, okay, well, we just want to cut costs as fast as possible, and we're willing to deal with the other complexities that might come along with slashing first and fixing later. So, do you have a particular um, I guess thought about that the slash first fix later mentality?
Yeah, I love it. I'm not surprised that Elon Musk has said that. But yeah, it's it is right, and it kind of fits it well. Where it's just, I'm sure it's, in his world, it's really just let's slash costs, and then once those are done, it's like, all right, well, let's figure out if, when you say fix it later, is there anything that has been damaged just because of, too much cost, being slashed, but like I said, I'm not surprised that Elon had said that.
I mean, I just feel like he creates this ball of chaos, right? And so if you're okay with chaos, then you slash first, fix later. Not everyone can handle that level, the same level of chaos or the same tolerance of chaos as Elon likes to deal with. Another favorite quote I have is one from Warren Buffett, another respected man in the business world, and his saying was, "The best way to cut costs is to not incur them in the first place." Right? So, like,
I love it.
all right, that's like basically just being more. That's optimizing for caution, where you're saying, okay, well, do we actually need this before we enter into this contract, right?
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, there's a bunch of ways to think about this whole concept of optimization. Um, cool. I guess the next question I had was, what do you have so regardless of which methodology you have, the Warren Buffett method, which don't spend money, and Elon Musk method of slashing everything. Do you have a way do you like to think about how to identify cost saving opportunities?
Well, I mean, I mean, for me, it starts, I think, with, I like to do like some sort of, spend analysis, right? I mean, well, I should back it up, right? I think it comes back to what are the goals of the company, number one, even short-term, long-term goals. But two, it's really kind of taking a look at the costs that are being incurred at the business, and even just doing a simple, expense analysis just to see, if there's a need, there's a want, or there's ways to negotiate, certain costs that are currently in the business. And during that exercise, you might realize that there are certain costs that one you don't need, right? There were more wants, right? That you could cut that back, but maybe there's negotiation tactics that you can utilize either through the vendor that is providing a good product or service that you could probably get a discount if there was a possible negotiation tactic there. But it's just understanding kind of what is being incurred by the business, and is that aligned with the goals of the company, is number one, I
Hmm.
think.
So basically the cost analysis, you have to analyze what given the goal. I love that you mentioned the word goals because it's like, okay, what is the goal? Yeah, Elon Musk is cut costs as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that would be the goal, the short-term goal, and the long-term goal for Buffett would be just grow shareholder value, right? So the idea there is you have to those things need to align, and
Hmm.
when you're looking, because this also I feel like one of our favorite topics here is you build a budget and then you think about the budget, and this really is about aligning goals with that cost analysis. Like it's kind of what I heard you say, which is interesting to think about that the budget kind of reflects the goals. Like you have to start with the goals
Hmm.
in order for this to work well. Well, good stuff. Let's see here. I guess the question is the next question that I had in my mind was the idea of leveraging technology. Do you have any like favorite tools or methodologies to go through this cost analysis or uh, process?
Yeah, you mean costs for technology, I guess, that you're
Hmm.
using in the business. But I guess if I think just understanding, like, because when you start looking at a cost, I think, to a firm, right? I mean, let's say like that, Elon there, slash first and fix later, like the fix could be damaging to some extent, meaning does that really affect, internally, like the employees, right? The quality, the team culture, or even customer satisfaction, right? Does it, if you just totally slash these costs just for, the heck of it, even when it comes to technology, is the product or service that you're providing damaged, to a point where it might harm the reputation of the company, but so by saying that, it's not so much like of to me, it's just a best practice of, that's why it's aligned to the goals of the business, because you want to make sure that you're maximizing the cost, but without disrupting the other side of that, right? Product quality, if it's the technology that you're providing. So it's just trying to, kind of look at that as like a little bit of a seesaw, as well. So I think it's an art and a science at the same time. It's not so much of this is how you do it. It's, I think every company is a little different, but just understanding, kind of what is the goals, as well as, core values, as well as the product that you're offering.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So thinking about a software company, generally software companies have software developers have two big costs. People and their hosting. Those are like and even and hosting even almost could just be considered the biggest of the rest because essentially people is the cost that drives it. So then you get into that question of like, okay, what is a methodology for controlling that cost, right? How do you know, obviously you mentioned a lot of like team culture and customer service. Um, other ideas that come to mind are productivity, engagement, resilience. The, there's a book by Gino Wickman that I think we're both pretty big fans of called Traction, and I think there's a philosophy there. I don't know if you have it handy. The concept, that concept of how you go through the people selection process.
Yeah, definitely familiar with EOS and Gino's book, The Traction there. But yeah, it's like they're putting in the right people in the right seats, right? And it is a process, and it's a GWC, which is, do they get, do they want it, and they have the capacity, to take on that role. and even been at, companies that really, followed, the EOS model. And it's really kind of defining the seats, defining the department, whatever, department it is, and then kind of going backwards and saying, all right, do we have the people here that fit in those buckets, right? And but once that's defined, and it really can be easily tracked, and they like to say, it's not an organizational chart, it's an accountability chart, but there are 3 to 5 bullet points that that person owns, and it's not so much of picking on the payroll person, but it's not so much, hey, I run payroll here. It's more of payroll, I own it. So when it comes to these seats, it's everyone in the organization should know what a person is doing in that company.
Excellent, excellent. And so I guess when I think about, so that's great. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful framework to go through and evaluate, the people on your team, and if they're in the right place, if they should be on the team at all, et cetera.
And
The
even
other thing I was,
really quick too,
yeah,
Chad, is, and sorry to cut you off there and jump in, but it does help, I think a lot of people get in that mode, especially in, say SaaS, and there's developers, and hey, we need more people, bring on more people, but without having a truly defined, seat, for a person, you might realize like you really don't need that person. Maybe they're shuffling internally with the people to put right people in the right seats too, and you can save some money as well.
yeah, that's true. I guess and the obviously then that kind of gets back to the idea of, like, where do you start when you hire? You look internally and determine, how to starting internally is always cheaper than finding an external person and bringing them in. But the other piece is also hiring is expensive. Period. Even if you hire someone you know and you trust already, just the process of bringing them on and getting them up to speed, let alone the cost of finding them and headhunting or whatever you want to call it. So then there's also the idea of that the cost cutting with respect to is retention. Can retention be a way to save money as well? And and then that kind of gets into like competitive packages and deferred compensation, other opportunities like that, can be a way to keep long-term, what is it called? It's not churn. Churn's like when customers leave, but I guess it's employee churn, right? Where employees are coming and going, and that can be very costly as well. Um, let's see here.
And that's very important, right? And even one of the big, and I always it stuck to me very, very well, but one of the global managing partners at McKinsey, right, the big management global consulting firm,
Mhm.
would like to say that the two most important people to the CEO are the CFO and then the chief human resources officer, specifically for attracting talent and then retaining talent, right? And just goes on and on about, why is it, it's not a coincidence that, the CFO and the CHRO are right next to the CEO in many different companies. Those offices are right next to each other. That, just to your
Hmm.
point, is, hey, we want the best people here, but we want to keep them here too.
Yeah. Another idea is that doesn't necessarily cost, more in the short, like in that, like with respect to giving people raises and that kind of thing, is cross training as well,
Mhm.
where and cross training slash process documentation, right? So that in the event that there is a change in team members, the team doesn't slow down significantly because more than one person knows how to do it, and if another person was brought on, if the process is well documented, they can get up to speed as fast as possible. So those are just couple ideas about how to potentially, like, maybe non-traditional ways to save money on keeping people, on your employee cost, but a way to do it as well. Then with respect to hosting, I guess this kind of goes back to what you're saying, just basically the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Ask for a discount.
Mhm.
Um, like I think what happens with lots of companies as they grow and they scale is they're like, well, we've already been paying this amount. Well, sometimes you get to a point where if you're big enough, that you have more leverage and you can ask for discounts.
Yep.
Do you see any other trends that are going on with respect to discounts or in this world, in the hosting world? Are there angles to work through?
Yeah, I think the discounts for sure, because I think some of these, hosting costs are really, like I think it's like AWS, like in Azure, they offered like the volume base pricing too. So even, I mean, the answer is always no unless you ask. So I mean, it can't hurt to just ask, if there's a discount or if there's a certain level that you need to get to do that. But there's like reseller programs, I believe, that are out there as well that could probably, help save some money. But for me, it's just from a hosting standpoint is just ask, I feel like there's more and more competitors out there now. So getting those volume-based discounts and pricing, I think from a competitive standpoint is going to be key to help save some money.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and then there's always the opportunity uh, to prepay. If the company
Oh yeah.
does have a good bit of cash or enough cash to deal with that, then prepaying, you can ask for a discount if the prepayment's available. So well, moving on. So then I guess there's the other concept of when you're talking previously about cost analysis. Another thing is the Pareto principle. Lots of people seem to think that we just got to focus on our big costs, right? Those are the ones that really drive change. But there's like the 80-20 rule. So there's also like the 80% of your costs are 20% of your vendors, or 80% of anything is 20% of the quantity. But there's the concept of a death by 1,000 cuts too, right? Like,
Hmm.
what if there's a bunch of other things that are happening that no one's looking at and no one's controlling, and they add up to a sizable amount. So is there so I guess is there a do you have a process or a favorite process or methodology or mantra for trying to balance between the two, the 80 and the 20?
Yeah, that's I mean that's I think a very difficult question. I think for a lot of businesses is just understanding that. But I mean, I feel like yeah, large, I guess big ticket items really do move the needle. Um, I think it should be looked at too, but even smaller, kind of reoccurring, call it costs, can, compound over time too. So it's I don't like I think I just go back to it's an art and a science, right? It's taking a look at the expenses of your business and then understand if there's ways to without disrupting, like we talked about, some sort of company culture and or external, kind of the service that or the product that you're providing. But if there are ways to maybe some minimize or negotiate certain costs that are absolutely critical, but I mean, I think it's worth being looked at, and I wouldn't say every single month, but even quarterly is a good exercise. There might be some sort of licenses that are not being used internally, so it's just trying to understand just what's happening, right? Because if you don't monitor it, you can't manage it. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's
And
kind of what I would say.
I've seen some companies who kind of have like a round robin approach where it's like every quarter there's something that's looked at, be it like R&D platform costs, or you want to call it one quarter, and next quarter might be HR, and next quarter might be travel, and next quarter might be, human resources, right? So you kind of go around and look at, in the next quarter might be sales. Like, just kind of look at
Mhm.
each individual department and say, okay, well, let's see if we can focus and optimize something here in a methodical manner, right? Rather than just being sort of haphazard.
Mhm.
There's the other concept of zero sum budgets. Are you familiar with those?
I am. Um,
How do those work, and why? And if you want to explain that real quick, or why it might be appropriate here?
yeah. Yeah, because I think everyone is used to maybe what like more of that top down, kind of budgeting, but it's almost like you're starting from zero. And it's I think a little bit more tedious, but to me, it's really just trying to, justify every line item that's going through, and this like a department, I guess, for this is what we need, from a spend, starting with, at zero and just start to kind of add it all up instead of kind of looking at previous months, previous years, but it's just, this is exactly what this department needs.
Hmm.
So, I've been at even some companies that not necessarily budgeted on that standpoint. Usually it's um, the alternative, but it's I'm familiar with it, so it's not like I've gone through it, but I know it's a little tedious.
Yeah, I think the concept I feel like the concept makes sense. I guess it's like the inverse of what you're saying, top down. This sort of a bottom up. It's like, all right, cool. What do you need to do your job? Just
Yep.
tell me what you need, and then we'll go see. We'll make sure that's in the budget, and that we're and that's what we're paying for. So then it starts potentially identifying things that are like, why are we paying for this? Nobody said they needed it. Let's turn it on. You
Yep.
know, and another way, to leverage the managers to say, okay, well, tell us what you need, and then we'll go back and make sure that's all we're covering that minimal amount, and then other things that aren't being used or being utilized or people even forgot about, or duplicate systems sometimes appear when you go through that process. But you're right, it is tedious and isn't something you want to be doing every day. Well, good stuff. So I guess I guess there's a couple of takeaways. Do you have any takeaways from what we chatted here about here?
Yeah, and I mean, I think some of that adage that we were saying, it's not so much like to really kind of like cut just to cut, but in a way that it's you're I don't know, say you're optimizing, I guess, but it's really kind of just taking a deep look into the business to see if there are ways. And to me, it's that seesaw. So just starting to look at this somewhat frequently, whether it's quarterly or, I mean, heck, even once a year is better than nothing. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
just start to look at it.
Yeah, and I love the idea of like what you were mentioning about the goals. Like, what are you optimizing for? What are the short term, mid term, long term goals? That is the priority for the company, and and then also the concept of like, are you being frugal or are you being cheap? You know,
Hmm.
like, which one is it? You know, so frugal makes sense. Cheap, can often create problems down the road. So good
Yep.
times. Uh, Thanks again for all your wise words here, Mr. Jeff,
You as
and
well, Chad.
we will be back again next week, God willing, and we will be here to share some more thoughts.
I love it. Thank
Take
you.
care.